and to imply that we should just ignore the impact that Caitlin Clark had on this team, this league, this sport. Nah, it doesn't work that way.
After basketball superstar Sue Bird changed her opinion about Caitlin Clark, the WNBA went crazy.
Sue Bird calls out ESPN host for, quote, hating on WNBA playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark's exit. You say, what? Why?
Yes, it is correct. Subbird, who had previously backed Caitlin, criticized Stephen Smith, stating that the WNBA is doing just fine without Clark. Caitlin is currently on a pleasant vacation, but she may move to Europe in the future. Sue, however, thinks that the numbers are still enormous, which is untrue. Sue was standing up for Caitlin at that point, but it looks like she's had enough because Caitlin's disappearance has caused a stir on social media. Fans are reluctant to watch more WNBA because they want her back.
Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is, in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening, and that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us.
There are the facts. The WNBA is returning to reality on a downward trajectory without Caitlin. The number of spectators has decreased in each game that has been played without Caitlin. Sue, however, thinks that Caitlin's absence from basketball won't lead to any issues.
Viewership numbers with Caitlin Clark are astronomical. She is a big draw. She brings in all the things. And yes, the games where she's not playing have lower viewership. But in the WNBA playoffs are still breaking records from previous WNBA years.
Rachel Dita raised an excellent point. When Caitlin is the face of the sport, WNBA legends don't want it to develop. Instead of dealing with Caitlin's rivalry, they would like to start over.
But they don't want it to grow if it's certain people at the face. And there is still this undertone of jealousy that for some reason I cannot get around calling it anything else but that, because I don't know what else it could be. I thought it was going to get better this season, but it hasn't. There are still people who seemingly, to me, feel like they just don't want Caitlin to be a part of it.
Caitlin Clark's WNBA career was nothing short of revolutionary. But the moment she left the playoffs, the WNBA seemed to lose its vitality. The league may now be in serious peril due to growing rumors about Europe. First, WNBA star Sue Bird had nothing but admiration for Caitlin Clark. Bird had been a vocal advocate for Clark, believing that she was a player who could improve the game. Sue Bird acknowledged in her initial remarks that Caitlin Clark was more than just a novice. She had the potential to completely transform women's basketball.
What's the problem, Sue Bird? I know that you gave her props and you acknowledged how phenomenal she was in terms of a draw. What Shannon Sharp and I were guilty of saying was that not enough folks were appreciating it.
However, when Sue Bird started to minimize Clark's influence, things took an unexpected turn. This was surprising, especially from someone who had praised Clark so much in the past. Bird abruptly claimed that the WNBA's viewership had not changed significantly as a result of Caitlin Clark's appearance. Bird seemed to imply that Clark's absence was unrelated to the league's current problems, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Many supporters were perplexed and even offended by Bird's abrupt change in viewpoint. Stephen A. Smith is the one who has continuously backed Caitlin Clark. Smith, who is well known for his audacious views and unvarnished criticism, has never shied away from controversy. Additionally, Clark was quick to voice his opinions after leaving the playoffs. Smith didn't hold back. He said that the excitement surrounding the playoffs had been spoiled by Clark's absence.
4 moved home games to bigger arenas when Indiana came to town to accommodate more fans. I'm not finished. Attendance for the entire league is up nearly 50% this year, and Indiana leads all teams with an average attendance of 17,035, up 319% from a year ago.
For Smith, one player's departure from the court wasn't the only issue. It has to do with the WNBA losing its main attraction. He emphasized that the league needs to acknowledge how crucial Clark was to their success by pointing out how viewership had drastically decreased since her departure. Smith's position wasn't merely an observation. It was an appeal for action. He thought that in order to maintain the momentum and elevate players like Clark, the WNBA needed to do more. Sue Bird, however, was not amused. She openly criticized Stephen A. Smith for his remarks, claiming that he was incorrect to blame Caitlin Clark's absence alone for the drop in playoff viewership. Bird retorted that there were other variables at work and that no single player was responsible for the excitement surrounding the playoffs. Fans and commentators took sides in the contentious discussion that followed Bird's refutation of Smith's allegations. On the one hand, Stephen A. Smith thought that the main cause of the hype surrounding the playoffs was Caitlin Clark. Conversely, the game's legend Sue Bird maintained that the WNBA was greater than any individual player, even one with Clark's level of influence.
Let's just say the ratings aren't the same with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever now eliminated. Game 1 of the Aces Liberty matchup on Sunday drew an average of 929,000 viewers. Was down nearly 50% from last Sunday's Fever Sun contest. By the way, not only was viewership down, but attendance was as well.
Subbird continued to challenge Stephen Smith A. She strengthened her position and refused to acknowledge that the fall in WNBA viewership was mostly due to Caitlin Clark's departure. Bird insisted that Clark wasn't the only reason for the decline in interest, despite the fact that ratings fell precipitously following his departure. Many fans were irritated by this failure to recognize the Caitlin Clark influence. The stats didn't lie, after all. When Clark was playing, the number of viewers increased, but after she left the court, it drastically decreased. Those who had been watching the playoffs attentively didn't like the idea that there were other factors contributing to the drop. Following Clark's departure, fans noted that there was a noticeable decline in the excitement surrounding the games, and it was difficult to ignore the connection between her departure and the decline in viewership. However, Bird persisted in maintaining her position and refused to grant Clark the recognition that many thought she was due. As the discussion about Caitlin Clark's influence went on, this gap between Sue Bird and the supporters became increasingly noticeable. Many felt that the WNBA's veterans were out of touch with the league's present situation because Bird refused to acknowledge Clark's influence. The very legends they had once loved were now alienating fans who had been brought to the WNBA by Clark's performances. Many found it disturbing that Bird, who had previously been viewed as a mentor to younger players, was suddenly minimizing Clark's importance. It made people wonder if the WNBA was prepared to change or if it was trapped in the past and unable to welcome the upcoming generation of stars. One of the most perplexing aspects of the whole scenario has been the WNBA's unwillingness to acknowledge Caitlin Clark's significance. It was evident that Clark was different as soon as she joined the league.
A lot of this noise came by people that were sitting on this network. They tried to minimize her, said, well, you giving her all this credit. What about the women that came before her? What the women came before her, what they did cannot be taken away. That ain't got nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. But there was a lot of people tried to make sure they keep Caitlin Clark in her place because what you're doing, if you give her all this shine, you minimize what they done. We saw the ratings, we saw the merchandise sales, we saw the attendance, but y'all want to make it about something else.
Her games attracted large crowds. She stood out from many of her colleagues thanks to her great social media presence and ability to engage with followers. Nevertheless, the WNBA was reluctant to completely embrace the Caitlin Clark impact in spite of all of this. The WNBA was unable to capitalize on the surge of attention that Clark brought to the league, whether it was because of internal politics, player envy, or just a failure to recognize her star power. Rather than positioning her as the WNBA spokesperson, the league was happy to let her succeed independently without the full backing of its marketing apparatus. The league's viewership figures started to decline once Clark left the playoffs, so this omission would prove to be costly.
Caitlin Clark has created more buzz around the basketball landscape and has actually transformed and revived a league that was the WNBA, and she is getting paid a measly $28 million.
The WNBA lost out on a chance to expand its viewership and cement its position in the sports industry by not properly acknowledging the Caitlin Clark effect. Rather, it now has to deal with dwindling viewership, irate viewers, and a lack of excitement for its major events. The league is in a risky situation that might be challenging to overcome as a result of its unwillingness to accept Clark's star power. Stephen A. Smith has continued to be one of Caitlin Clark's most outspoken advocates throughout it all. Smith has continuously pointed out what he believes to be an agenda against Clark, while others have minimized her influence or even disregarded her achievements. Whether it's through on-court targeting or a lack of off-court marketing, Smith has noted how the league appears to treat Clark differently than other players. He has discussed how Clark has been targeted with fouls, picked out by opponents, and ignored in terms of league-wide recognition.
Don't y'all want a greater profile? Don't y'all want more notoriety? Don't y'all want more hype? I understand that it's going on still without her now that she's out of the playoffs because the games have been great. But the fact of the matter is, she swelled the interest in the sport.
Many of Caitlin Clark's supporters are starting to advocate for her to quit the WNBA entirely as the controversy surrounding her treatment there grows. They contend that Clark would be better off competing in the EuroLeague, where she would probably be treated with greater dignity and have more financial options. Fans in Europe think Clark's skills will be fully recognized and she wouldn't have to put up with the ongoing abuse and targeting she experiences in the WNBA. Many of Clark's fans are urging her to make the decision as quickly as possible, and the movement is becoming more and more vocal. They think Clark would be better suited playing for a team that appreciates her abilities and efforts because the WNBA has shown its real colors.
The Caitlin Clark effect is definitely real. I mean, we can all see that. However, experiencing it in person is totally different. I was at the Fever in Indiana game last night, and the amount of 22s that I saw on the way to the arena and inside the Capital One Arena might as well have just been a home game for Caitlin Clark. Not Indiana, Caitlin Clark. The thing is, that didn't surprise me. But what did surprise me was how packed the game was.
One of the main reasons fans want Caitlin Clark to think about leaving the WNBA is the financial opportunities in Europe. The EuroLeague might provide her with a more lucrative career, even though the WNBA has found it difficult to fully capitalize on her star power. Not only would Clark make more money in Europe, but she would also receive the recognition she merits as one of the top women's basketball players. Supporters contend that Clark wouldn't have to cope with the small-time politics and jealousy that have dogged her WNBA career in Europe. Rather, she could concentrate on what she does best, dominate on the court and keep building her reputation as one of the game's most captivating players. It's a secret that Caitlin Clark is a target in the WNBA due to her dominance. Instead of welcoming the heightened competition, some current and legendary players have publicly stated that they want her to quit the league. Even if it meant losing fans, they think the league would be better off without her. Caitlin Clark is too talented, according to these players, and her presence makes the league more competitive than they would like. Some players, especially those accustomed to being the league's top stars, see Clark as a threat due to her ability to raise the standard of play. They perceive her as someone who challenges the current quo rather than as a welcome addition. Increasing number of players are pushing Clark out of the WNBA as a result of this jealousy, even if it means less people will watch.
Stephen A., respectfully, with your platform, you could have been doing this 3 years ago if you wanted to.
All right, we gotta go.
Stephen A., I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you.
Wow.
Don't do that. I'm talking to you about the power that you have.
Really appreciate
missed, my girl, but you've missed a lot of episodes of First Take.
Even more unexpected is the fact that some athletes are prepared to put up with less viewers in exchange for avoiding playing Caitlin Clark. Instead than encouraging the WNBA to develop and improve, this kind of thinking highlights a fundamental problem inside the league. If it meant avoiding the fierce competition that Clark brings to the court, some players would prefer to see it stay static. This readiness to give up viewership in exchange for less competition says a lot about the WNBA's current situation. Some of the league's players seem more concerned with preserving their own domination, even if it means sacrificing the league's success, even though the league should be focused on expansion and drawing in new supporters.
There could be a team overseas who would love to snatch Caitlin Clark away from us and give her a crazy offer. I mean, Ice Cube was about to give her $5 million to play in less than 10 games in the Big Three. So the money is there, and if these owners are smart with it, I could definitely see more WNBA players going overseas and possibly not returning.
Caitlin Clark has had an enormously positive impact on the WNBA despite all the hostility she has encountered. She has boosted the league's audience, attracted new supporters, and strengthened competition. Her unmatched ability to raise awareness of women's basketball has made her a ray of hope for the sport's future. Clark is one of the most well-liked players in the league thanks to her excellent on-court performances and her ability to relate to the crowd. Nevertheless, the WNBA and some of its legends still refuse to properly recognize Clark's influence in spite of her numerous efforts. They appear determined to minimize her impact rather than celebrate her achievements. In addition to being unfair, this failure to give Clark the credit she merits is harmful to the league's expansion.
All I know, when they got eliminated from the playoffs, the attendance dropped, the ratings dropped. If the WNBA is more, it is, and I get it. Why aren't people watching?
Caitlin. The WNBA has unquestionably been shattered by Caitlin Clark's elimination from the playoffs. The league has struggled with dwindling viewership as well as some of its most well-known players' refusal to acknowledge Clark's significance. Whether the WNBA is prepared to acknowledge it or not, Caitlin Clark's impact will undoubtedly continue to influence the future of women's basketball as fans demand that she go to Europe and the league finds it difficult to bounce back from her absence. Please subscribe and leave a like if you liked it. There are more videos displayed.
I feel like after the break, I still don't think she's dominating, but she's a different player than she was in the first half of the season.